On the other end of the wire was Lieutenant Commander Bob Shoemaker, fighter pilot, astronaut candidate, had been there 2 years when I got there. And his first words were, "How you doing, buddy?" Ah, that was my cue. I'd been looking for someone to tell my troubles to. I said, "I'm doing terrible, buddy." I said, "For goodness sakes, my president sent me over here. I get shot down. It's his beautiful little war. Now look who's paying the price." And then some idiot mechanic just put a transistor in that airplane. Something went wrong. It wasn't my fault. And get Congress over here. They're the ones that appropriated all that money. Let them sit in this prison camp because I'm going to rot away and die in here. Help me. He said, "You want to know your biggest problem?" I thought, "You mean I got problems bigger than the ones I can see?" He said, "It sure sounds like it." He said, "It sounds like you're suffering from a fairly common prison disease, and it can kill you if you don't catch it in time." I said, "What's the name of this disease? Maybe I know something about it." He said, "Around here, we call it prison thinking." I said, "Prison thinking?" He said, "Roger, you think you're a prisoner." I thought, what kind of nut did he put me next to? Guy's in space somewhere. He doesn't know how badly I hurt. But I had to keep communicating. I had to keep validating. I had to keep tugging on the wire. I said, "Tell me about prison thinking." He said, "Well, when a guy gets shot down, the very normal, red-blooded American thing for him to do is start feeling sorry for himself and blaming everybody else." He said, you go into the woe is me mode of life. You're safety wired there. Woe is me. Poor Mama Plum's little boy Charlie, long way from home in a communist prison camp. They get a bushel of pity and then just squalor in it. He said, then you start blaming everybody you can think of. Blame your president for sending you over here. Blame the Congress for appropriating the money. Blame your mechanic for putting your airplane together. Blame your mother for giving you birth. He said, the problem with this, of course, is when you start blaming other people for your misfortune, you suddenly give them control over your life. I must admit to you, it took me a long time to validate that principle, and I'm still working on it today. I get out here on the highway, I'm driving down the road, minding my own business, doing 55, right on the double nickel. Some idiot comes around me, cuts me off, I hit my horn, I hit my brake, I wave my fist, I yell some obscenity, and all day long I'm stirring up all these cholesterol, see, getting ready for a good old heart attack. Or the guy that cut me off, just driving right on down the road, doesn't even know my name, and yet he's got control of my life. I said, "Okay, Shoemaker, you got my attention now. Tell me what the antidote is to this disease." He said, "Well, the first thing you need to break down the walls of prison thinking is faith." He said, "And not just the spiritual faith. Of course, you have to believe in something greater than yourself, but you have to have faith in your country and faith in your roots and faith in the United States of America." He said the second thing you need while you're here is commitment. You got to be committed to a set of standards. You can't be afraid to stand up and tell the world what you think is right. He said the third thing you need is P-R-I-D-E. I said, pride, and I looked at my poor, wretched body again, and he said, "That's right, pride. You got to be proud of yourself. You got to believe you're a good enough person. You can overcome the problems, and one of these days, march out of here a proud American with your head held high." I said, "Okay, I think I've got those things, faith, commitment, pride." And I found during those next 6 years, those three factors were more important than the rice we ate or the water we drank. The Shoemaker sure packed my parachute that day. He gave me those panels which allowed me to overcome the adversity of prison life. But he certainly wasn't the only one to do it. And if we hadn't been involved in a fellowship of prisoners of war, I don't think I'd be standing here talking to you today. And one of the greatest parachute packers of all in that camp was an enlisted man. Now, most of us, as you know, were officers and pilots, and very few enlisted in the prison camps in Vietnam. And yet one guy was there. He was a Navy sailor. How did a Navy sailor get into a prison camp in a ground war in Asia. He fell off his ship, and he got washed ashore. Try to explain that to your commanding officer. Seaman Douglas Hegel from Clark, South Dakota. 17 years young, and he enlisted in the Navy, and he sent him off to a place he couldn't even pronounce. And late one night, he fell off the end of his ship. He floated around for 6 hours, finally washed ashore, captured, and put into a prison camp 10,000 miles away from home in a communist country he couldn't pronounce, where he had to live with 200 macho fighter pilots, which may have been the worst part. Oh, young Hegel could take a joke. He was kind of a Radar O'Reilly kind of a kid. What a parachute packer. We used to have these contests, you see. We would tug on the wire, tap on the wall, and our secret code, we'd say, who's the oldest in the prison camp? Or who's been here the longest? Or who's got the most children back home? One time we had what we called the high-fast, low-slow contest to determine what pilot had jumped out of his airplane highest and fastest, who'd gone out lowest and slowest. Well, high-fast was won by some Air Force jock that punched out of his F-105 at 52,000 feet, 1,000 miles an hour. Low-slow contest was won by Seaman Hegel. "12 feet at 15 knots, right there. Some 3 years into my stay, the North Vietnamese were getting a lot of flack from the world press at their treatment of prisoners and their torture techniques. And so they wanted to release some guys early as proof of their goodwill. And most of us were given an opportunity to go home early. Well, as you know, we had a code called the Code of Conduct. It's not a military regulation. It's only a code. You can't be court-martialed for it. And yet we were all brothers in there, and so we elected not to accept early release because that was the code. Oh, there were a couple of guys who did. 2 officers decided that they would go home and accept early release. Our senior man selected Seaman Hegel, that he should go first. Why? Well, first of all, Hegel was the youngest person there and an enlisted man. But more important than that, Hegel had developed a photographic memory in that prison camp. He'd gone through the list of 200 prisoners, memorized first, middle, last name all the way through. He went back through, memorized our identifiers or social security numbers, and after that he memorized our next of kin, and then each hometown of each of the relatives, and finally, I'm not kidding you, he memorized the telephone numbers of each of the relatives of each of the 200 of us prisoners of war. Well, the 3 fellows came back, Hegel, the legal one, and the 2 officers who decided to go their own. Now, what would you suspect? Here's a 19-year-old lad, a sailor with 2 years back pay in his pocket, hadn't seen a girl in 2 years, and he's free on the streets of San Diego. Oh, remember, he's a parachute packer. Well, while the 2 officers decided to go on some great vacation of their own with all of their back pay, here's what Hegel did. He started to travel. He went west coast to east. He spent a lot of his own time and a lot of his own money. He went north to south. He went through each of the hometowns he'd memorized. He dialed each of the telephone numbers he had memorized. He spoke to each of the relatives he'd memorized and told them that their prisoner was alive. Got any Hegels in this association? I would submit that you do, by about 96%.